Hey guys, welcome back to Daska Discusses. Well, I finally got to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's 9th film. I'm a huge Tarantino fan, and I want to let you guys what I thought of the movie. There will be no spoilers, so don't worry, or even if there is, I'll let you know beforehand. Let's do this. Now, IMDb describes the plot of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a faded TV actor and his stunt double strive to achieve fame and success in the film industry during the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969 Los Angeles. So you take that premise and you put Tarantino into it, and you're gonna get this kind of period piece. You're gonna get this kind of like film that's set in the late 60s in Hollywood, and I'll tell you what, from the get-go, you're immersed in it. Like the set design, when they're driving around, everything, like the locations, everything feels like it's there and tangible, like you can actually be there. Like it feels like you're transported back into that magical time. Now the storyline, like we just said before with IMDb, follows Leonardo DiCaprio's character Rick Dalton, who's an actor, and then you got Brad Pitt, who plays Cliff Booth, who's his stuntman. And it kind of, look, the film does go for 2 hours and 40 minutes, I'm pretty sure. And I must say, like, as you follow DiCaprio's character and a bit of Brad Pitt's, the story kind of like chips away at different subplots at times. Margot Robbie plays Sharon Tate as well, the real life character, the real life person, I must say. And in typical Tarantino style, the film does kind of split up at times through different storylines and what's happening. And there is at times some flashbacks, and to some extent you don't even know that they're flashbacks until you're shown, like, you know, a further scene. You think, okay, well, the editing there, did it really work like that? Well, yeah. So it's interesting how Tarantino's taken his own directive style and actually changed that up a bit, meaning that, like, there's still the use of flashbacks, but there was just certain scenes where you think, okay, well, we've progressed from that scene, and then it cuts back to it. So that was really interesting. Now, can't really get into much of this, like, the storyline in terms of, like, I don't want to give away too much, right, obviously, but the first 40-45 minutes of the film, I found that it did drag a little bit. Now, I'm pretty patient with a lot of films as well, and I love Tarantino, and he's got that kind of, like, you know, in The Hateful Eight, where it does kind of lead up to something. I just found that, you know, the first 40 minutes, there's a bit of exposition every now and then. Pacino's got a good role in it as well, but you just find that, you know, DiCaprio, you know, struggling to be an actor, which is good. He was a TV actor, and then he's once again into film, and you show some struggles of that. And then you got Brad Pitt, his stunt double, who does some odd jobs for him every now and then basically live up on the Hollywood Hills, and there happens to live is Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. Now this is where the film gets interesting, and put it this way, if you went into this film and you have no idea when I say the words Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski, Charles Manson, Bruce Lee even to that extent, but mainly those ones there, we're talking about Tate, Manson, Polanski, what was happening during the 60s at the time in Hollywood. And however, what I felt that was that as the movie progressed, you know, I think there was a lot of scenes that just kind of like got bogged down on the details where we didn't really need that much details on it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, like, well, you know, that's Tarantino style. Look, I love Tarantino. I love all his films. But there was times, unfortunately, where I was actually looking at my watch thinking, how long's to go? Or also, I was looking at my watch thinking, geez, an hour and a half has passed. We've still got like another hour to go. And nothing much has happened in terms of, like, if you're expecting action, you're not gonna get that action per se. The dialogue is fantastic, Brad Pitt is fantastic as well. It's just that at times, it does tend to drag on a little bit. But having said that, when it hits the 2 hour mark, you know that something's happening. There is a really good scene with Brad Pitt when he goes up to this ranch. Can't give away too much there as well. That's where things started getting a bit eerie. Like I said before, if you don't understand, or if you have no idea about what was happening in this 1969 at the time with Sharon Tate and Charles Manson, and, well, I'm just gonna put it out there, the Manson murders, about what happened, and the Manson followers and the cult that he had, then as the film progresses, you probably, well, the whole film as a whole, even when it ends, you're gonna be like, okay, well, what's the point of that? But if you do have some sort of historical background of the production period of the time, then, well, like I did as well, like I must say the last 25, the last 20 minutes were fantastic, and they were Tarantino-esque, meaning that look guys, you've got, Pulp Fiction, epic ending, Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, they've all got amazing, Inglourious Bastards, come on. Now that's where, not giving away too much, but this film did remind me a lot of Inglourious Bastards. Why? I can't tell you that because that's giving away way too much. But the clue is where I was saying about the production period, about where the film is set. Tarantino has taken it and, well, he's done something very interesting with it. I'm not going to give it away because that's a spoiler, correct? As far as acting goes, the performances from all the main characters, the protagonists, is what you got Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Leonardo DiCaprio, even Al Pacino, they've all got some great roles and they all played it really well. What I found was that I think Margot Robbie's character wasn't fleshed out enough in terms of they didn't utilize her a lot. But then it got me thinking afterwards that that's the whole point. That's the whole point in the ending, that Sharon Tate's character wasn't used a lot, and then when you get to that ending, again, I can't get into it because it's spoiling everything. You kind of understand why she wasn't focused on for that point. The soundtrack, as always, is amazing. I mean, if I was to buy that soundtrack, I've got the Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs soundtracks. This is up there if you're a big 60s fan. If you're a big film buff and you enjoyed, you want to see what filmmaking was like in the 60s and you understand about what a spaghetti western is, and the Italian spaghetti spoof westerns as well. There is all these kind of references to old filmmaking, okay? Now that's where the average cinema goer out there these days, who, I'm not saying that the average person out there doesn't know all this stuff, maybe you do, but when we're being fed all these superhero films one after the other and sequels and all these franchise films, when something like this comes along, if you're not aware about what was happening at the time, you probably feel like this is boring and what ending was that and I don't get it and that kind of stuff. So this film isn't for everyone. As a Tarantino film, does it stand up against the other, I made my top 5 that I made the other day, does it stand in that top 5? I have to see it a few more times. For now, no. I don't think it stands in the top 5. That's a big call to call now. I've got to watch it a few more times, but I don't think it will. Now, we'll be getting into some spoilers after I give my ranking or my rating of the film as well, just minor ones. So my rating for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, although at times did seem very laggy and, I didn't get restless because I love longer films, but I just think at times there was just too much exposition happening and it just can we just get to the main kind of meat of the story, and those parts weren't fleshed out enough. I give Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a 7.5 out of 10. It's still a pretty good score, B+. Definitely a B+. Not a bad film, but not the greatest Tarantino film that everyone's talking about. Everyone's got their own opinion though, and that's why we're here on Daska Discusses. I'm discussing what I thought. Hope you liked my spoiler-free review, 7.5 from me. Now before I get into my spoiler talk, guys, don't forget to like. If you liked the video, leave a comment below, let me know what you thought of the film, and subscribe of course, don't forget, so you can stay up to date with all my uploads. Now let's get into some spoiler talk briefly on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So if you haven't seen it, shut the video down guys, and I'll see you guys next time on Daska Discusses. Now for spoiler talk, what I was going to say, and for those of you who have seen the film, what I was saying before, if you're aware of the production period about the Tate murders, what I found was that the way they portrayed Sharon Tate was fantastic, right? It was great, and Margot Robbie did a great job. The way I was like, well, why aren't they getting into a lot of detail with her? She's hardly in any scenes, she's hardly got any dialogue. I think the whole point was right at the end when, that was a pretty epic ending though, you gotta give it that. Remember, like in Inglourious Bastards, when we saw the demise of Adolf Hitler in Tarantino's kind of version where he gets machine gunned in the face? Well, this is what Tarantino did with this film here. He took the Sharon Tate brutal murders that actually did happen in real life it wasn't Charles Manson, it was his followers, so they got all that right as well. What they did was they changed that around, and I found that when I was in the cinema, I'm like, aha, okay, this is what Tarantino's going for. He's going for another history change. He's taking a historical event and he's changing it. A quite dark historical event, but he's changing it to the neighbors of Sharon Tate. So that's why I felt that when all that happened and all that crazy stuff happened and everyone died, and then Sharon Tate's friend was at the gate, and then Sharon Tate's like, oh, come up here, come have a drink. It was good because it kind of threw back to when Leonardo DiCaprio's character Dalton was like, I'm one pool party away from being up there and hanging out with Polanski and Tate. I did find that last bit when when DiCaprio walks and he meets Sharon Tate and they hug and they go in for drinks and all that, I kind of felt, it's there for a reason, that whole scene, and it's meant for the audience to feel upset about what actually happened to Sharon Tate and the brutal murders that actually did happen. So I kind of felt sorry, and I was like, kind of sad for the brutal way that she was murdered and all that, but the way Tarantino went about changing history, saying, hey, imagine if it didn't happen and it was to the neighbors and all this crazy stuff happened and everyone died and everyone in the cinema when I was watching was cheering. It was actually hilarious. And then having Sharon Tate be alive, it's just another way of putting an historical event. And you know what? That's why it's kind of called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because it's Tarantino's vision of an historical event that happened. What's interesting is that in Inglourious Basterds, it starts off with the same thing, Once Upon a Time in Nazi-occupied France. Very similar films, taking historical events and changing them around. Which one was better? For me, it's Inglourious Basterds, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was still good, and that's what I gotta say about my spoiler talk. Like I said before, guys, if you enjoyed my video, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Daska Discusses. Boom!